So for the last year now, I have been mainly practicing with my lighting and in part some audio to try and improve the quality of A, the channel, and B, my craft. Now, one of the areas that I'm not paying much particular attention to, and that is focus racking. Now, in the last two videos, I talked about fixing the camera lens shift that the follow focus was giving me, and then the video after that then was talking about the hands-made tilt, because in there was a particular scene where there was an impactful focus rack being used, and after that I wanted to find out how does that impact a scene whereby the same scene is played out, say 5 or 6 times, but the only key difference is how we use focusing or focus racking. What is the emotional impact if we leave the focus rack at a particular plane and don't move it? How does that change from you focus racking between two different points? How does that change that same scene and how we feel about it? Because that all ties into the narrative of the story that you are trying to tell. So the basic setup that we've got today is pretty much the same scene as what we've got now. We are going to be using the living room and the kitchen because that offers enough depth between the 2 points. So when we do a focus rack between here and the kitchen, you'll be able to see what impact that has. Now, before we go into the scenes themselves, this was shot at night, so this had to be lit, so we'll have to do a brief talk about that, because what I didn't want to do, I didn't want this to be a dark and contrasty image that you couldn't see me move between 2 points. It had to be lit up enough so that you could see myself transitioning from the table through to the kitchen and back. And the reason why we're doing that transition is down to the scene itself. So the backstory is I've held someone hostage, and during that point I've looked to the kitchen and I can see the knives. Now I decide to get up and walk over to the knives slowly, look at the knives, decide which knife I want, pick the knife up and then come back, and that is just the basis of the scene. So it's quite an intense scene, but what I wanted to find out is how the focus rack changes the mood, because I wanted there to be different emotions and I wanted to learn for myself what would be better used in those type of situations, or how that made me feel about that particular scene. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the actual first scene. So the first scene is using close focus, and which is pretty much what you're seeing now. So we have set the focus at this focal plane and we have not going to change it at all. We're just going to leave it here. So even when I get up and move to the kitchen, it's not going to change focus. So we're going to see how does that make us feel about that particular scene. So for the second scene, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using far focus. So whereas in the first scene we focused on myself and left the focus there, what we're going to do is set the focus on the knives and leave it at that focal plane, and we'll see how that plays out. So for the third scene, we're going to introduce rack focusing, and this is going to start at myself. That'll be the first point, and then when I look to the knives, the camera will focus to the knives, and it will stay focused on those knives for the rest of the scene, and we will see how that plays out. Now for the fourth scene, this is where we take the rack focusing one step further. So where we left off the third scene, whereby we stayed focused at the knives, what we're going to do is we're going to rack focus back to me, and then we're going to leave the focus at that point. So it's going to rack focus from myself to the knives, and then from the knives back to myself, and then it's going to stay at that focal plane. And we'll see what effect that has. Now the fifth scene is a tracking shot. So in the last few scenes, we've seen what happens when you keep the focus static at specific points, and then the following two scenes were more on focus racking. Now the trackers focus shot, what that's going to do, it's going to stay on myself, and then when I get up and move to the knives, the actual focus rack is timed to do that in a number of seconds, and I think it's about 8 seconds that it takes for me to get from the chair to the knives, and then it'll wait there for a period of time, and then I will walk back. So it's simulating a focus tracking shot, and we will see how that plays out now. So those are the 5 scenes that have been played out. Write down in the comments which one you thought was the better one, what emotional impact did they leave you with, and why, and what do you think literally worked best. For that, I got an eyelash, buddy eyelash. Well, I'm not going to get rid of it too much because it's the most hair I've probably got on my head. Now for me, the first and the fourth scene I think worked best in regards for that particular shot, and the reason for that is that the end focal plane was still here. So even with the focus rack, and when I looked at the knife and then it came back, when I got up and went to get the knife, there was still that, for me, that bit of tension whereby you didn't know which knife I was going to pick. In the other two scenes whereby the focus rack was literally on the knife, I felt that there wasn't the same tension or the emotional connection that I had to it. Now, with the tracking shot, because I was in focus throughout the whole frame or the whole scene, it didn't leave me with anything. I was really pleased with how I did this shot because this was done using the new Tilta Nucleus Nano and the Edelkrone head one, and this had to be timed perfect. So I had to time that scene out exactly as I needed those movements. So I had to sit here for 10 seconds. The next position then, to get from here to the knives, that had to take 8 seconds. I had to wait at the knives for around about 6 seconds. And then it was another 8 seconds then to get back. So that particular scene took about 4 or 5 attempts to get right. But in the end, it wasn't the right scene. So what I'm trying to get at is it's important for us to know how a focus rack affects us, because that was wasted effort had we implemented that on a shoot, because it wouldn't have left me with anything emotional. So yeah, food for thought, something to keep practicing. If you do like the content that you are seeing, please give it a thumbs up. It would help out massively. Hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.